Hi everyone, and welcome back to another exciting knife review by George. Today we're going to talk about the Coldsteel Rajah 3. This particular model has the AUS10A series steel. Now the first page here, as usual, we're going to just have a summary of the rating as well as the specifications. You can freeze this video right now to look at it, or you can just look at the description section of this video. So we're not going to waste time here and jump straight into the detail of the review. So first of all, the knife has good ergonomics. We'll get to that later. And it has a very good build quality. That's definitely a big thing I want to emphasize, is that the knife has just flawless build quality everywhere, and I can't find anything that is wrong with it. It's just a very, very nice product made in Taiwan again. And let's talk about the blade now. Now the choice of this steel is actually AUS10A. Many people probably not very familiar with it. Many of the Japanese-made kitchen knives feature this AUS10A steel, which is at around the same, similar in terms of carbon content to 440C stainless steel. But from some of the knife review videos I've seen so far, it indicates this steel actually, at least as far as the Coldsteel version goes, is actually able to hold the edge similar to a 154 CEM, probably even better than most of the manufacturers' 154 CEM. And it is going to be better in terms of edge retention than many of the VG10 as well. So it's definitely not something to be underestimated. I know that looking at pure chemical composition wise, it's not very impressive. It's around like 1% carbon content, etc., etc. You know, like you probably wouldn't think it's like a very high performance steel, but for the kind of price you pay, this is a very, very good bargain. The next thing is the sharpness. Post cutting. Taiwanese made knives often come very, very sharp. There's some tab here, which is a Coldsteel proprietary thing, I believe, and it's kind of similar to Emerson wave opening, and it provides very good comfort here. A section here which is preventing you from cutting your finger off if you were to shut the blade. And some style, obviously, it's kind of like a Emerson wave, like that. I still actually find it like a little bit weird to use. So I wouldn't say it's quite as good as the Emerson waves, but obviously with practice that can be achieved. Now some of these points are very self-explanatory, so I'm not going to get into details with it. You can read it, freeze the video if you like. Now this handle here obviously features the very strong triad lock, which is Coldsteel is probably greatest offering to their customers in terms of locking mechanisms, and this thing is damn strong. And they've obviously done a lot of videos on YouTube to show how strong they are, and I don't need to mention anymore. And the finger ramp here is huge, so you know that once you hold the knife on, like it's very secure. The handle features a very, very curved, well, it's not super curved, but you can see it's not straight up and down. Like there's like some little curve here to actually help you to have like a more grip to the handle. And there's a back spacer here, which it's fairly solid, some kind of polymer composition wise, and I have no doubt like you can use this as an impact tool against someone in self-defense situation. And the handle is fairly large. By fairly large, I mean like I'm a sort of like a medium to small sized hand sort of user, and I still got like a little bit of space here. So unless your hand is like super uber big, which this knife will probably prove to be too small for you anyways, it's going to be kind of like it's a fair for you to like, if you have like medium or slightly toward larger size hands. And at the end of the handle, you get like this little hook, which is, should you use the knife like instead of like slashing or attacks or anything, like you know that you have extra security here. If you look inside the knife, it has like a metal liner on both sides. I researched briefly on internet, and there's no solid information on the liner's material, but most of the websites indicated it's actually stainless steel, so that provides some extra strength to the locking mechanism as well as the handle. And there's traction on the handle, like, which is, I believe, molded when the handles were made. And you also have a stop pin, which is actually made of just a solid pin instead of a screw. And that's just to show you that they actually make this thing extra strong, because screws can, under shock and stuff, they can actually start to wear out and unthread itself. There's no ambidextrous pocket clip, but they've made two pocket clips for you. So like this comes with the knife if you buy one, and it actually, you can swap it over if you want, but the default is obviously a right-handed carry. And these points are self-explanatory. You can freeze the video now if you want to have a look. So some negative points on the knife is that if you try to flick open this knife like one-handed, like, okay, the Spyderco knife, which is, I can do it, flick it open super fast, right? And I just could not do it with the Coldsteel, because the blade is just so damn heavy. And the locking mechanism is obviously very, very strong, so like that prevents you from doing so. If you just flick it open with your wrist action, it can be done, but it's just, in terms of deployment speed, it's not super high. The knife weighs 5 ounces. That's pretty heavy for a 3 inches something blade. So in terms of negative things, the blade recovers. Actually, you can't sharpen this knife obviously on a flat bench stone, because you can't actually meet some of these surfaces with a flat bench stone. But alternatively, use something like a sharpening rod or something, you can still sharpen the knife. So it's not really a huge problem. And the other thing I prefer is like if the knife has like a sort of like a more pronounced thumb ramp instead of like a flat sort of patterned thumb ramp. So in terms of control, like, you know, like if I was to cut like this, it wouldn't matter. But if I was to thrust the knife, which probably this knife isn't exactly quite designed to do, I prefer if there's a thumb ramp that goes this way. That would actually provide more comfort and security. The blade is very, very wide, so you can imagine putting this knife in your pocket. It's going to take up just about all the pocket space. I mean, Spyderco are known to sort of do similar things, but for example, looking at this knife here, it doesn't quite compare the width that the Coldsteel actually occupies. The other thing is about this handle. I feel like it's somewhat narrow here, and like even though it's made like very, very thick and fat, this dimension wise, it kind of like, I feel like there's probably more control to it if the handle were slightly kind of like wider over here. Also, I think for anyone who has a very, very like long fingers, like my fingers are kind of like relatively short and due to the size of my hand, but like anyone with longer fingers, I think they could like find this knife like a little bit of lack of space to grip. And the other thing is about the liners. There's no skeletonized liners, excuse me. So the weight of this 5 ounce is probably mostly coming from a very heavy blade and very solid liners. That's something I think maybe the designer could work on in the next revision. Obviously, the below points are very self-explanatory. You can freeze the video. So, positive things on this, based on my speculation, is that the very wide profile of this knife, it would prove very devastating if you were to like use it to stab someone. Just imagine how much flesh and how many like artery that this thing can cover when you stab it. The triad lock. When the actual locking bar travels to close the knife in, there's so much surface it covers. It goes right into the very depths of that groove. It forms a very strong lock, because for this thing to fail, the knife has to slip right out of the control of this locking bar. Whereas like if you're looking at any other lock backs, for example this Spyderco Persian, or looking at the lock bar's thickness, how vertically see the difference is huge. So basically the triad lock is truly the strongest lock. There's a, so instead of a flat back tongue, there's like a little curved little groove on the very back surface of this tongue. The little curve meets right here onto the stop pin, which is to reduce the wear and tear when the knife is open and closed. So the negative things based on my speculation is that the handle has a very smooth edges around here. So this side is smooth here and that's smooth here. So what's the problem with that? When I open the knife one-handed, notice how like my other fingers have to rest onto this surface. Actually, I need a very firm grip to actually open the knife. By doing so, like my fingers actually rest on a smooth surface, which I prefer if it was like a more sturdy textured surface to prevent slipping. So I think that's something like maybe they could pay attention for, is that smoothing the surface here is actually not good for opening the knife. I think maybe with the pocket clip it improves like somewhat security, because I definitely don't want to like slip and kind of like drop the knife while opening it. And the other thing is like, notice how loud the knife is when you open it. Okay, that's this one. And that's this. Notice the difference is that this triad lock, because of the very high string, like a high spring tension, we'll do it again. Yeah. So because of the high spring tension, you get a very loud bang when you open the knife. This could be actually a good thing or a bad thing. If you don't want people to know like you carrying a knife, or like using it in your office and trying to cut an apple or something, that loud noise is definitely a downfall. Whereas like if you're in the street, someone tries to rob you and stuff, and you go like, hey, this is a knife. You open up this knife and make this such loud noise. It's actually, people understand like, you know, they're facing someone who mean business. So that's something for you to decide. Final note on this thing is like, I think Coldsteel definitely has a home run with this triad lock knives. I didn't buy any of these knives until just recently, because most of their knives just kind of look to me kind of not very pleasing visually. They kind of look like kind of cheap knives or something for some reason, you know, for the kind of price they charge you. But this knife, I think, is like, the price is good and it looks very special. It doesn't look like cheap or anything. Therefore, I bought one of these. Only thing I don't really like is that the liners are just not hollowed. So in terms of weight, it's not so justifiable for such a small knife and stuff. But other than that, I think if you never had a Coldsteel knife before and you want to get something, you know, to try it out, and this is a very good purchase. I recommend it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.